Nexus Prime looked nothing like the space stations Maya had seen in movies. Instead of cold metal corridors and blinking lights, the Federation's capital was a living work of art that stretched across hundreds of miles of space. Gardens floated in transparent domes, connected by bridges that curved through dimensions Maya did not understand, and the architecture seemed to grow organically rather than being built by machines. Maya traveled to the station aboard a Federation transport ship, her first time leaving Earth's atmosphere. As the blue planet fell away below them, she felt the weight of representing every human who had ever lived pressing down on her shoulders. Alexander sat beside her, offering quiet encouragement. But Maya knew that once they reached Nexus Prime, she would face the Council alone. The Council chamber is designed to accommodate beings of vastly different sizes and environmental needs, Kelrin explained, as their ship approached the station. You will see species that exist as energy patterns, others that require methane atmospheres, and some that communicate through quantum vibrations. Do not let their appearance distract you from your message. Maya had spent weeks preparing for this moment, but nothing could have prepared her for the reality of standing before 300 representatives of alien civilizations. The council chamber was a vast sphere with speaking platforms suspended at different levels to accommodate species with different gravitational and atmospheric requirements. Some delegates looked almost human, differing only in skin color or eye shape, while others were so alien that Maya could barely comprehend their forms. She saw beings made of crystalline structures that chimed like music when they moved, others that appeared to be living clouds of gas held together by electromagnetic fields, and creatures that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Representatives of the Galactic Federation, announced a voice that seemed to come from everywhere at once. We gather today to consider the integration of species 347C, known to themselves as humans, of the planet they call Earth. Maya walked to the central speaking platform, her legs unsteady but her resolve firm. The chamber fell silent as 300 alien minds focused their attention on one 19-year-old girl from Chicago who had been homeless just a month ago. Honored delegates, Maya began, her voice amplified by Federation technology, so that every being in the chamber could understand her words in their own language. My name is Maya Rodriguez, and I'm here to tell you about humanity. She had memorized a formal speech during her preparation, full of statistics about human achievements and potential. But standing before these ancient civilizations, Maya decided to speak from her heart instead. I know many of you have concerns about my species, Maya continued. You have studied our history and seen our wars, our environmental destruction, our failure to care for our most vulnerable members. These concerns are valid. Humans have done terrible things to each other and to our planet. A ripple of movement went through the chamber as delegates shifted in whatever way their species expressed attention. Maya could see the Zephyrian representatives, tall beings with armor-like skin and multiple eyes, leaning forward with what looked like satisfaction at her admission. But I am not here to defend human perfection, Maya said. I am here to speak about human potential, about our capacity to grow, to learn and to choose compassion even in the face of suffering. Maya told the council about her own life, about being abandoned by systems that should have protected her, about living on the streets with nothing but still choosing to help others who had even less. She spoke about the people who had shown her kindness, without expecting anything in return, about the shelter workers and volunteers and ordinary citizens who proved every day that humans were capable of extraordinary compassion. 2 weeks ago, I saved a man who was being attacked by criminals, Maya said. I had never met him before, and I gained nothing by helping him except the satisfaction of knowing I had done the right thing. That man turned out to be Alexander Kane, one of Earth's most powerful individuals, and my simple act of kindness set in motion the events that brought me here today. The Zephyrian Prime Delegate, an imposing figure whose armor seemed to shift colors with emotion, rose to speak. One individual's kindness does not excuse a species' violence. Humans wage war constantly, destroy their environment, and abandon their young to live in poverty. How can such a species be trusted with galactic technology? Maya had expected this challenge, but hearing it spoken with such conviction still sent a chill through her heart. She thought about all the humans who would never have the opportunities she was being given, all the people still living on the streets or trapped in systems that did not care about their welfare. You are right, Maya said, surprising the Zephyrian delegate. Human society has failed many people, including me. But failure is not the end of the story. It is the beginning of growth. Maya told the council about the homeless shelter where she had stayed, about Linda and the other workers who devoted their lives to helping society's forgotten people. She spoke about the volunteers who served meals without being paid, about the ordinary people who donated clothes and money to help strangers, about the gradual progress being made in addressing poverty and inequality. Yes, our systems are imperfect, Maya said, but they are improving because humans like Alexander Kane, like the shelter workers, like the volunteers, choose to make them better. We are a young species still learning how to live together, but we are learning. A delegate from the celestial harmony, beings of pure energy who communicated through light patterns, pulsed with what Maya had learned was curiosity. Young human Maya Rodriguez, what evidence can you provide that your species will continue this growth if given access to advanced technologies? Maya thought about the question carefully. I cannot provide guarantees about the future, she said, but I can tell you that in my 19 years of life, I have seen humans choose kindness over cruelty, hope over despair, and growth over stagnation, even when those choices cost them something precious. She told the council about children she had helped on the streets, about their resilience and capacity for joy even in terrible circumstances. She spoke about elderly people who had lost everything, but still found ways to care for others, about young people who had been abandoned by society, but who refused to abandon their dreams of making the world better. The human you see before you today was living behind a dumpster 1 month ago, Maya said. I had no home, no family, no prospects for education or career. By many measures, I was one of society's failures. But I was given a chance to grow, to learn, to contribute something meaningful to my species' future. Maya gestured to encompass the entire council chamber. Every species represented in this room must have faced similar challenges at some point in their development. The question is not whether humans are perfect now, but whether we have the potential to become worthy members of this community. The chamber was completely silent as Maya concluded her speech. I believe we do have that potential, not because I am special or unique, but because I am ordinary. I represent millions of humans who choose compassion every day without recognition or reward. If you give humanity the chance to learn from your civilizations, to be inspired by your examples of cooperation and growth, I believe we will prove worthy of the trust you place in us. Maya returned to her seat, her heart pounding as the delegates began their deliberations. The voting process took hours, with representatives from each species conferring among themselves and with their homeworlds. Maya watched the patterns of light, sound, and movement that constituted debate among beings whose thought processes were completely alien to human understanding. Finally, the presiding delegate, an ancient being from a species so old their homeworld had been destroyed billions of years ago, called for the formal vote. All delegates will now register their decision on human integration into the Galactic Federation. Maya closed her eyes, unable to watch as 300 civilizations decided the fate of her entire species. She thought about Alexander, about Linda at the shelter, about all the people on Earth who were going about their daily lives without knowing that their future among the stars was being decided by a homeless girl who had chosen kindness over bitterness. The vote is concluded, the presiding delegate announced. By a margin of 173 in favor, 122 opposed, and 5 abstentions, humanity is granted provisional membership in the Galactic Federation, pending demonstration of continued peaceful development over a period of 10 Earth years. Maya opened her eyes as the chamber erupted in sounds and lights that represented celebration, approval, and welcome from dozens of species. She had done it. Against all odds, a girl who had been forgotten by her own society had convinced the galaxy that humanity deserved a place among the stars. But even as delegates approached to offer congratulations and welcome, Maya was already thinking about the work that lay ahead. Provisional membership was just the beginning. Now humanity had to prove that her faith in their potential was justified. The news of humanity's acceptance into the Galactic Federation spread across Earth within hours of the council vote. But the real surprise came in what Alexander Kane did next. Instead of using his new access to alien technology for profit or power, he announced the creation of the Maya Rodriguez Foundation. dedicated to finding and supporting individuals who embodied humanity's potential for compassion and growth. Maya stood beside Alexander at the press conference, still adjusting to the idea that her name would be associated with one of the largest charitable organizations in human history. The reporter seemed more interested in her story than in the technical details of galactic integration, asking questions about how it felt to go from homeless to humanity's representative to the stars. "I did not do anything special," Maya told them honestly. "I just tried to help someone who needed help. The real heroes are people like Linda at the shelter, the volunteers who serve meals, the foster parents who open their homes to children who have nowhere else to go. They choose kindness every day without expecting recognition." Alexander had bigger plans than just charity work. Within weeks of returning from Nexus Prime, teams of Federation social scientists arrived on Earth to study human society and identify the factors that produced individuals like Maya. What they discovered changed how both humans and aliens understood the relationship between suffering and compassion. "Adversity does not automatically create wisdom or kindness," explained Dr. Yara Chen, the Federation sociologist who led the research team. "But when it is combined with social support systems and examples of altruistic behavior, it can produce individuals with extraordinary capacity for empathy and moral reasoning." The Maya Rodriguez Foundation began by identifying young people who had overcome significant challenges while maintaining their compassion and integrity, former foster children who had become social workers, homeless individuals who shared resources with others, refugees who volunteered to help newer arrivals, people who had suffered but chose to prevent others from suffering the same way. Each person identified by the foundation received comprehensive support, educational opportunities, and resources to pursue their dreams of helping others. Maya personally interviewed hundreds of candidates, using her own experience to recognize the quiet strength that came from surviving adversity without becoming bitter. The first class of Maya Rodriguez scholars included 30 young people from around the world, each with a story of overcoming obstacles while maintaining their humanity. There was Carlos from Mexico City, who had lived on the streets for 3 years but spent his days helping younger homeless children find food and shelter. Janet from Detroit had aged out of foster care, but used her experience to become an advocate for child welfare reform. What these individuals have in common, Maya explained to a gathering of Federation delegates who visited Earth to observe the program, is not their suffering, but their response to suffering. They could have become angry or selfish or given up completely, but instead they chose to use their pain to help others. The Federation observers were fascinated by the program's results. Within 2 years, the first class of scholars had launched dozens of initiatives addressing poverty, homelessness, education, and healthcare around the world. More importantly, their work began to change how human society viewed and treated its most vulnerable members. Maya traveled constantly, speaking at universities, conferences, and community centers about her experience with the Galactic Council and her vision for humanity's future. But she always returned to Chicago, to the shelter where Linda still worked, and the streets where she had learned that kindness was a choice that could be made even in the darkest circumstances. "The aliens did not accept humanity because we are perfect," Maya told audiences around the world. "They accepted us because we are capable of growth. But that acceptance was provisional, based on our ability to prove that we can become better than we are today." The Federation monitoring of Earth's progress was thorough and ongoing. Alien observers documented changes in human behavior, social policies, and cultural values, looking for evidence that humanity was moving toward the kind of cooperative, compassionate civilization that could contribute positively to galactic society. The results exceeded everyone's expectations. Inspired by Maya's example and the Foundation's work, governments began implementing new approaches to addressing poverty and homelessness. The idea that society should be judged by how it treated its most vulnerable members gained traction in political discussions around the world. But the real changes happened at the individual level, as millions of humans learned Maya's story and began looking for ways to choose kindness in their own lives. Social media filled with stories of ordinary people helping strangers, sharing resources, and choosing cooperation over competition. Maya's simple act of helping a bleeding stranger in the rain had become a symbol of human potential. The The Zephyrian Empire, which had most strongly opposed human integration, sent a delegation to Earth 3 years after the integration vote. Their mission was to reassess human development and provide input for the final membership decision that would come at the end of the provisional period. We expected humans to use Federation technology primarily for military or economic advantage, admitted Commander Zeftar, the delegation's leader as he toured one of the Foundation's community centers. Instead, we observe systematic efforts to address social problems and support the most disadvantaged members of your society. Maya met with the Zephyrian delegation personally, no longer the nervous girl who had addressed the council, but now, a confident young woman who had spent 3 years learning about galactic civilization while never forgetting her roots on Chicago's streets. My species is learning, Maya told the alien visitors, but we still have far to go. The difference is that now we have examples and inspiration from civilizations that have solved problems we are still struggling with. We are becoming better because you gave us the chance to learn. The Zephyrians were particularly impressed by the way human communities had rallied around the Maya Rodriguez Foundation's mission. Former enemies found common ground in supporting vulnerable children. Wealthy individuals dedicated their resources to lifting up the poor, and entire cities competed to become models of compassionate governance. By the 5th year of humanity's provisional membership, the transformation was undeniable. Homelessness had decreased by 60% globally. Educational opportunities had expanded to reach previously underserved populations, and mental health support systems had been revolutionized based on Federation psychological research. But perhaps more importantly, the culture had shifted. Acts of kindness were celebrated and rewarded. Social status increasingly derived from contributions to community welfare, and children learned from an early age that the measure of a person was not their wealth or power but their willingness to help others. Maya, now 24 and holding advanced degrees in both medicine and interspecies relations, stood once again before the Federation Council as they prepared for the final integration vote. This time, she was not alone. Representatives from every nation on Earth accompanied her, along with dozens of Maya Rodriguez scholars who had become leaders in their communities and fields. 5 years ago, you took a chance on humanity based on the potential you saw in individuals like me, Maya told the assembled delegates. Today, I present evidence that your faith was justified, not because humans have become perfect, but because we have proven our capacity for growth, for learning, and for choosing compassion over selfishness. The final vote was unanimous. Every species, including the Zephyrians who had once opposed human membership, agreed that humanity had demonstrated the values and commitment necessary for full integration into galactic civilization. As Maya walked through the gardens of Nexus Prime after the ceremony, surrounded by beings from across the galaxy who now welcomed humans as equals, she thought about the night in the rain that had started it all. She had been trying to survive, living day to day with no hope for the future when she made a simple choice to help a stranger. That choice had rippled outward in ways she could never have imagined, changing not just her own life, but the trajectory of her entire species. Maya Rodriguez, who had once been society's forgotten child, had become the catalyst for humanity's greatest transformation. And in shelters and community centers around the world, new generations of children learned about the girl who had saved a man in the rain and, in doing so, had saved them all. The story became legend, passed down not as history but as inspiration, proof that anyone could change the world by choosing kindness when kindness was needed most. The galaxy was vast and full of wonders still to be discovered, but Maya knew that humanity was ready for whatever lay ahead. They had learned the most important lesson any species could master, that true strength came not from power or technology, but from the simple decision to help others, especially when you had nothing to gain and everything to lose. Maya Rodriguez had once been homeless, forgotten, and alone. Now she was humanity's bridge to the stars, and the ripple effects of her compassion would spread through the galaxy for generations to come. Alexander's private facility looked like a normal office building from the outside, but Maya quickly realized that nothing about this place was normal. They passed through security checkpoints that scanned them with lights she had never seen before, and the elevator descended much deeper underground than should have been possible in downtown Chicago. "Maya," Alexander said as the elevator continued down, "what I am about to show you is the most important secret on Earth. Once you see it, you will understand things about our world that very few humans know." Maya gripped her backpack tighter and tried to stay calm. "Are you going to hurt me?" "No," Alexander said immediately. "I am going to ask you to help save every person on this planet, including yourself." The elevator doors opened into a chamber so large Maya could not see the walls. The ceiling stretched up into darkness and the floor was filled with technology that looked like it belonged in a science fiction movie. Holographic displays showed star maps with points of light scattered across impossible distances, and machines hummed with energy that made Maya's skin tingle. "We are not alone in the universe," Alexander said, watching Maya's face as she took in the incredible sight. "Humans share the galaxy with hundreds of other intelligent species, and they have been watching us for decades." Maya walked slowly into the chamber, her eyes wide, but not frightened. Where another person might have run or fainted or refused to believe what they were seeing, Maya approached the alien technology with curiosity and wonder. "Why are you showing me this?" Maya asked, reaching out to touch a holographic display that showed a three-dimensional map of the galaxy. "Because in 3 weeks, those alien civilizations are going to vote on whether humanity is ready to join them among the stars," Alexander said, "and I believe you are the key to making sure that vote goes the right way." Alexander activated a translation system, and suddenly Maya could hear voices speaking in languages that had never existed on Earth. The sounds were beautiful and strange, like music from another world, but she could understand every word as dozens of alien species discussed human behavior, human potential, and human flaws. "They have been studying us," Alexander explained, "learning about our history, our culture, our capacity for both creation and destruction. Some of them think humans are ready to join the galactic community, but others believe we are too violent and primitive to be trusted with advanced technology." Maya listened to the alien voices discussing human wars, environmental damage, and social inequality. She heard them debate whether humans could learn to cooperate with species completely different from themselves, whether humanity could grow beyond its violent tendencies. "What does this have to do with me?" Maya asked, though she was beginning to understand. "The species that oppose human membership point to our worst behaviors as evidence that we are not ready," Alexander said, "but they are missing something crucial about humanity. They see the wars and the crime, but they do not see the Maya Rodriguezes of the world." Alexander showed Maya recordings of herself helping others over the past 2 years, images captured by security cameras throughout Chicago. Maya watched herself sharing food with hungry children, comforting crying strangers, stopping fights, and helping people who had no way to repay her kindness. "You represent the best of what humans can be," Alexander said, "not just intelligent or creative or strong, but compassionate. Even when you had nothing, even when the world treated you badly, you chose to help others. That is what these alien civilizations need to see about our species." Maya studied the holographic displays showing alien worlds, cities that floated in space, beings that looked nothing like humans but who had learned to work together across vast differences. "You want me to talk to them? I want you to show them who we really are," Alexander said. "Not the politicians or the generals or the billionaires, but the people who choose kindness, even when kindness is hard." Maya was quiet for a long time, processing everything she had learned. Finally, she asked, "What happens if they vote against humanity?" "We remain isolated on Earth," Alexander said. "No access to technologies that could solve our environmental problems, cure diseases, or help us reach other worlds. Humanity stays trapped on one planet, while the rest of the galaxy moves forward without us. And if they vote for us, humanity joins a community of hundreds of species working together to explore the galaxy, share knowledge, and solve problems no single world could handle alone. We get the chance to become more than we have ever been before." Maya walked to a display showing Earth from space, a blue and white marble floating in the darkness. She thought about all the people like her, forgotten and abandoned by systems that should have cared for them. She thought about the children she had helped, the elderly people she had comforted, the strangers she had saved without expecting anything in return. "Why me?" Maya asked. "There must be other people who would be better at this. There are people who are more educated, more experienced with politics and diplomacy," Alexander admitted. but there is no one who better represents what humanity could become if we were given the chance. Alexander told Maya about the Zephyrian Empire, the alien faction that most strongly opposed human membership in the galactic community. He explained how they saw humans as inherently violent and selfish, how they believed that giving advanced technology to humanity would only lead to more destruction. They are not completely wrong, Alexander said. Humans have done terrible things to each other and to our planet. But they are not seeing the whole picture. They are not seeing people like you who prove that humans are capable of growth and compassion. Maya looked at her reflection in one of the holographic displays, seeing a thin girl in worn clothes who looked much younger than 19. I do not know anything about space or aliens or politics. You know about kindness, Alexander said. You know about choosing to help others even when it costs you something. You know about maintaining hope in the face of suffering. Those are the most important qualifications for representing humanity to the galaxy. Alexander showed Maya recordings of other species addressing the Galactic Federation Council, diplomats and leaders making formal speeches about their civilization's achievements and potential. Then he showed her the voting records, how most of those formal presentations had failed to convince the council that the species was ready for membership. Maybe the problem is that they are sending the wrong representatives, Alexander said. Maybe the council needs to see what a species does with its most vulnerable members, not just its most successful ones. Maya spent hours learning about the different alien species, their cultures and values and ways of thinking. She was surprised to discover that many of them had faced the same problems humans faced, wars and environmental destruction and social inequality, but had learned to overcome those challenges through cooperation and mutual aid. They want to see if we can learn to do the same, Alexander explained. If humans can grow beyond our current limitations and become worthy partners in building a better galaxy. As Maya learned more about the galactic community, she began to understand that her own experiences gave her unique insights into what it meant to survive and thrive, despite adversity. She had lived through abandonment and neglect, but had not let those experiences make her cruel or selfish. If I do this, Maya said finally, if I agree to speak for humanity, what happens to me afterward? Whatever you want to happen, Alexander said. If you help humanity join the galactic community, you will have access to educational opportunities beyond anything Earth can offer. You could become the doctor you always wanted to be, studying medicine that could help millions of people. Maya thought about her dreams of healing others, of using science and compassion to make the world better. The chance to learn from civilizations that had conquered disease and suffering was more than she had ever dared to hope for. When would I have to do this? Maya asked. The integration vote is in 3 weeks, Alexander said. We would need to prepare you, teach you about galactic law and customs, help you understand how to communicate with beings who think very differently than humans do. Maya looked one more time at the image of Earth from space, thinking about every person who had ever been forgotten or abandoned, every person who chose kindness despite having every reason to choose otherwise. If this could help people like me, Maya said slowly, people who have been left behind by society, then I have to try. Alexander smiled, and Maya could see relief and hope in his eyes. Then we begin tomorrow. Maya's preparation for the most important speech in human history began at sunrise the next day. Alexander had provided her with a private apartment in his facility, the first real home she had lived in since aging out of foster care. The rooms were simple but comfortable, with clean clothes that actually fit her, more food than she had seen in months, and a bed that did not require her to sleep with one eye open. But Maya barely noticed the luxury because her days were filled with learning about civilizations and concepts that most humans could not imagine. Her first teacher was Ambassador Kelrin himself, the 8-foot-tall alien with 4 arms and color-changing skin, who served as the Galactic Federation's primary contact with Earth. Human Maya Rodriguez, Kelrin said when they first met. His skin shifting to patterns that Alexander had taught her meant respectful greeting. Alexander Kane believes you can show my people the true nature of humanity. Maya tried not to stare at Kelrin's alien features, focusing instead on the intelligence and kindness she could see in his large eyes. I am not sure I am the right person for this. I have never even been to college. Wisdom and compassion cannot be learned in schools, Kelrin replied, his skin showing colors that meant amusement. They must be lived and practiced. From what I have observed of your actions, you have more education in these areas than most beings I have encountered. Kelrin taught Maya about the structure of galactic civilization, how hundreds of species had learned to work together despite vast differences in biology, culture, and technology. She learned about the Council of Worlds, where representatives from each species gathered to make decisions that affected trillions of beings across thousands of planets. The Federation is not a government in the way humans understand governments, Kelrin explained. It is more like a family of species that have agreed to help each other grow and prosper. Each member brings unique strengths and perspectives that benefit the whole community. Maya learned about species that communicated through color changes like Kelrin's people, others that existed as energy beings without physical bodies, and civilizations that had transcended individual consciousness to become collective minds. The diversity was overwhelming, but Maya began to see patterns in how these vastly different beings had learned to cooperate. The key to successful integration, Kelrin said, is demonstrating that a species can put the welfare of others ahead of immediate self-interest. Many civilizations fail this test because they cannot move beyond tribal thinking. Maya spent hours each day studying holographic recordings of previous integration votes, watching species make their cases for membership and seeing how the council responded. Most presentations focused on technological achievements, military strength, or economic potential, but Maya noticed that the most successful speeches talked about values and character. The council has seen thousands of species present their accomplishments, Alexander explained during one of their evening discussions. What they have not seen is someone like you, someone who embodies the potential for growth and compassion that exists in every human being. Maya's second teacher was Dr. Sarah Kim, a human linguist who had been working with the Federation for 5 years. Dr. Kim taught Maya how to communicate with beings whose thought processes were completely different from human patterns. The Zephyrians, who oppose human membership, think in terms of hierarchy and dominance, Dr. Kim explained. They will try to trap you with questions about human violence and social problems. But the other species think differently. The Celestials value harmony and cooperation. The Builders focus on long-term growth and development. Maya learned to recognize the different ways alien species expressed emotion, agreement, and disagreement. She practiced responding to challenging questions without becoming defensive or angry, techniques that reminded her of staying calm when dealing with hostile people on the streets. Remember, Dr. Kim said, you are not trying to convince them that humans are perfect. You are trying to show them that humans are capable of growth and positive change. Maya's third teacher was Professor Chen Wei, a philosopher who specialized in ethics across different species. Professor Chen helped Maya understand the moral frameworks that guided Federation decision-making. Every species in the galaxy has faced the choice between selfishness and cooperation, Professor Chen said. The ones that choose cooperation survive and thrive. The ones that choose selfishness destroy themselves or remain isolated forever. Maya began to see how her own experiences connected to these larger philosophical questions. Her choice to help Alexander, despite having nothing to gain, was exactly the kind of behavior that the Federation looked for in potential member species. As the days passed, Maya grew more confident in her understanding of galactic civilization, but she also grew more nervous about the enormous responsibility she was carrying. One evening, she found Alexander standing in the observation deck of his facility, looking up at the stars through a transparent dome. "Are you having second thoughts?" Alexander asked without turning around. "Every day," Maya admitted, joining him at the window. "What if I mess this up? What if the things I say convince them that humans are not ready? Then we will remain on Earth and continue growing until we are ready," Alexander said. "But Maya, I have watched the recordings of your preparation sessions. You understand these concepts better than most career diplomats would. More importantly, you understand them from the perspective of someone who has lived them." Maya looked up at the stars, trying to imagine the vast civilizations that existed among those distant lights. "Dr. Kim says the Zephyrians will ask me about human violence and cruelty. What am I supposed to say to that?" "Tell them the truth," Alexander said. "Acknowledge that humans have done terrible things, but explain that we are capable of learning and growing. Tell them about the people you have helped, the kindness you have seen even in the worst circumstances." Maya spent her final week of preparation practicing her speech with holographic simulations of the Federation Council. The technology allowed her to experience what it would feel like to stand before 300 alien representatives, each one judging whether humanity deserved a place among the stars. The simulated Zephyrian ambassador was particularly challenging, asking pointed questions about human wars, environmental destruction, and treatment of the poor and homeless. But Maya found that her experiences on the streets had prepared her for these challenges in ways that no amount of academic study could have. "You speak of human compassion," the simulated Zephyrian said during one practice session, "but your own society abandoned you to live on the streets. How can you defend a species that treats its own young so cruelly?" "Because the same society that failed me also produced people who helped me survive," Maya replied. "Shelter workers who cared about strangers, volunteers who served food without being paid, ordinary people who shared what little they had with someone who had nothing. Yes, our systems are imperfect, but our people are capable of extraordinary kindness." By the end of her preparation, Maya had memorized the names and cultures of all 300 species represented on the Federation Council. She understood the political dynamics that would influence the integration vote and the arguments that would be made for and against human membership. But more importantly, Maya had come to understand that her own story was not just about one homeless girl overcoming adversity. It was about the human capacity for growth, for choosing compassion over bitterness, for maintaining hope in the face of suffering. "You are ready," Kelrin told her on the final day of preparation, his skin showing colors that Maya had learned meant confidence and approval. "You understand not just the facts about galactic civilization, but the spirit that holds it together." Maya looked at herself in the mirror of her apartment, wearing clothes appropriate for addressing the most important gathering in galactic history. She looked older and more confident than the frightened girl who had hidden behind a dumpster just 3 weeks earlier, but her eyes still held the same compassion that had made her help a stranger in the rain. Tomorrow, she would travel to Nexus Prime, the space station at the heart of galactic civilization, to speak for every human being who had ever lived or ever would live. The future of her entire species rested on her ability to show 300 alien civilizations that humanity deserved a place among the stars. Maya Rodriguez was terrified, but she was ready. Finding one homeless girl in a city of millions should have been impossible, but Alexander Kane had resources that most people could not imagine. Within 6 hours of returning to his office, he had security footage from every camera within 10 blocks of where Maya had saved him, and his computer systems were analyzing thousands of hours of recordings to track her movements over the past 2 years. What Alexander discovered about Maya Rodriguez broke his heart and convinced him that she was exactly the right person to represent humanity to the stars. The cameras told a story that Maya had not shared during their conversation in the alley, a story of quiet heroism that happened every day without recognition or reward. 3 months ago, Maya had found a lost child crying in Grant Park and spent 4 hours helping him find his parents, missing her only meal of the day to stay with him until the family was reunited. 2 weeks after that, she had talked a young man out of jumping from a bridge, sitting with him in the rain for an entire night until social workers arrived to help. Last month, she had given her only warm blanket to an elderly homeless woman during a cold snap that sent dozens of people to the hospital. The cameras showed Maya sharing food with hungry children, directing lost tourists to safety, helping elderly people carry heavy bags, and breaking up fights between desperate people who were taking their anger out on each other instead of the systems that had failed them. She did these things naturally, automatically, like kindness was just part of who she was. Alexander also learned about Maya's past from files that required his highest security clearance to access. She had been born to a teenage mother who died of a drug overdose when Maya was 3 years old. After that, she had been shuffled between foster homes, some loving and some neglectful, but none able to provide the stability she needed for long-term placement. Her school records showed a girl who was exceptionally bright despite the chaos in her life. Teachers wrote comments about her curiosity, her gentleness with other children, and her determination to succeed despite circumstances that would have broken most people. Maya had maintained a perfect attendance record, even when she was living in foster homes where no one cared whether she went to school or not. The records ended abruptly when Maya turned 18 and aged out of the foster care system. After that, there were only the street cameras to tell her story, showing her gradual decline from hopeful teenager to survivor, but never showing her lose the kindness that made her help strangers in the rain. Alexander realized that Maya represented something crucial about humanity that the alien observers had missed in their studies. The Zephyrians and other species who opposed human integration focused on humanity's wars, crimes, and environmental destruction. But they did not see the Maya Rodriguezes of the world, the people who maintained their compassion despite suffering, who helped others even when they had nothing themselves. It took Alexander's team 3 days to find Maya's current location. She had been staying at a shelter on the south side of the city, but only when the weather was too dangerous to sleep outside. The shelter coordinator, a tired woman named Linda who had been helping homeless people for 20 years, recognized Maya's description immediately. "Maya Rodriguez," Linda said when Alexander's people asked about her. "That girl is special, never causes trouble, always helps with the younger kids, shares whatever she has with people who have even less. I wish we could do more for her, but we are always full and she never complains about sleeping outside." Linda told Alexander's investigators that Maya had been coming to the shelter for almost 2 years, but she never stayed long because she wanted to leave space for families with children. She volunteered to help serve meals even when she was not staying there, and had once spent her last $5 to buy formula for a baby whose mother could not afford it. "If you are social workers trying to help her, you should know that she is not like the other kids who age out of foster care," Linda said. Maya could have gotten angry, could have turned to drugs or crime or just given up completely. Instead, she became the kind of person who makes the world better just by being in it. Alexander decided to visit the shelter himself, something his security team strongly advised against. But he needed to understand Maya's world if he was going to ask her to represent humanity to alien civilizations. He disguised himself as a social worker and spent several hours talking to Linda and the other staff about the young people they served. "The system fails these kids," Linda explained as they walked through the shelter's crowded sleeping area. "We give them food and a place to sleep sometimes, but we cannot give them what they really need, which is someone who believes in them and helps them build a future." Alexander saw dozens of young people who reminded him of Maya, kids who had been abandoned by every system designed to protect them, but who still tried to maintain hope and dignity. He began to understand that Maya's story was not unique, that there were thousands of people like her who proved every day that humans were capable of extraordinary compassion. "Maya talks about wanting to be a doctor," Linda said. "Even now, living on the streets, she still has those dreams. She reads medical books when she can find them, asks the nurse who volunteers here about different conditions and treatments. That girl has the heart of a healer." Alexander left the shelter with a new understanding of what he was asking Maya to do. He was not just asking her to speak to alien diplomats about human potential. He was asking her to carry the hopes and dreams of every person who had been forgotten by society, but who still chose kindness over bitterness. His security team finally located Maya at a bus stop downtown, where she was reading a damaged medical textbook she had found in a dumpster. She looked smaller and more fragile in daylight than she had in the alley. But Alexander could see the same gentle strength in her eyes that had convinced him to trust her with humanity's future. Alexander approached Maya carefully, not wanting to frighten her. When she looked up and recognized him, her face showed surprise and concern. "Alex," Maya said, closing the medical textbook, "how are you feeling? Is your head okay?" Alexander was struck by the fact that her first thought was for his well-being, not for why a man in an expensive suit was tracking her down. "I am fine, thanks to you. Maya, I need to talk to you about something important, something that could change your life and a lot of other lives too." Maya studied his face with the careful attention of someone who had learned to read people for her own safety. "What kind of something?" "The kind that is too big to explain on a street corner," Alexander said. "Will you come with me somewhere we can talk privately? I promise you will be safe." Maya looked at the business card she had kept in her backpack, comparing the name on it to the man standing in front of her. Alexander Kane. She had heard that name before but could not remember where. "Are you really just a businessman?" Maya asked. "No," Alexander said honestly. "I am much more than that, and I think you are too." Maya packed her few belongings into her backpack and followed Alexander to a car that was nicer than any building she had lived in. As they drove through the city toward Alexander's private facility, Maya realized that her life was about to change in ways she could not imagine. She had no idea that the choice she was about to make would determine whether humanity remained alone on Earth or took its place among the stars. Alexander Kane stood in his private office on the 68th floor of the Kane Industries building, looking out at the city where a homeless girl had saved his life just hours before. The rain had stopped, and Chicago stretched out below him like a circuit board made of lights and dreams. Most people saw the city and thought about business or politics or the simple struggle of daily life. But Alexander saw something different. He saw humanity's future among the stars. The attack on Alexander had not been random violence or even normal business rivalry. The three men who had tried to kill him worked for people who wanted humanity to remain isolated and ignorant, stuck on one small planet while the rest of the galaxy moved forward without them. These people had allies that most humans could not imagine. Allies from worlds light years away who believed that Earth was too dangerous to join the galactic community. Alexander walked to his desk and activated a communication system that did not appear on any government registry. The holographic display showed a figure that would have terrified most humans, but had become as familiar to Alexander as his own reflection. Ambassador Kelran of the Galactic Federation stood 8 feet tall with 4 arms and skin that changed color based on his emotions. Right now, that skin was showing patterns of concern and frustration. Alexander, Kelran said, his words translated by technology that humanity was still decades away from developing. We monitored the attack on you tonight. The Zephyrian faction is becoming more aggressive in their opposition to human integration. Alexander nodded, touching the bandage on his forehead where Maya had cleaned his wound. They are afraid of what we might become if we join the Federation. They prefer us as we are, isolated and primitive. Not primitive, Kelran said, his skin shifting to patterns that Alexander had learned meant disagreement. Violent, unpredictable. The Zephyrians point to your wars, your environmental destruction, your treatment of your own poor and homeless. They say humans cannot be trusted with galactic technology or responsibility. Alexander thought about Maya, sitting in her doorway with nothing but still willing to share her food with a stranger. They are wrong about us. Humans are capable of incredible compassion and growth. We just need the chance to prove it. The integration vote is in 4 weeks, Kelran reminded him. 300 species will decide whether humanity is ready to join us. The Zephyrians have significant influence, and their arguments against human membership are convincing to many. Alexander activated another part of his communication system, one that recorded everything that happened within a certain distance of his body. The holographic display filled with images from the alley behind the dumpster, showing Maya's face as she risked her safety to help him, as she cleaned his wounds with gentle hands, as she offered to share her last food with someone she barely knew. This is what humanity truly is, Alexander said, pausing the recording on Maya's eyes as she looked at his injury with concern. Not the wars or the violence that the Zephyrians focus on, but this. The instinct to help others, even when we have nothing to gain and everything to lose. Kelran studied the images with the careful attention his species gave to all data. One individual does not represent your entire species. She represents what we can become, Alexander said. What we are becoming, one person at a time. Alexander told Kelran about Maya's story, about her dreams of becoming a doctor, about the way she had been failed by systems that should have protected her but still maintained her kindness and hope. He explained how she lived with nothing but still found ways to help others, how she had been abandoned by society but had not abandoned her humanity. The Zephyrians argue that humans are selfish and violent, Alexander continued. But Maya Rodriguez proves them wrong. She has every reason to be bitter and cruel, but instead she saves strangers in the rain. If we can show the Federation who she really is, who humans like her really are, we might change their minds about our species. Kelran's skin shifted through several color patterns as he processed this information. You want to bring this homeless girl to Nexus Prime to address the Integration Council. I want to show them that humanity's greatest strength is not our technology or our military power, Alexander said. It is our capacity for compassion, especially in the face of suffering. Maya embodies that better than any politician or general ever could. The council has never heard testimony from a representative of the poor or displaced, Kelran said. Usually species send their leaders, their best educated and most accomplished individuals. Maybe that is why so many species fail the integration vote. Alexander said. Maybe the council needs to see what a species does with its most vulnerable members, not just its most successful ones. Alexander knew this was a massive risk. Maya had no education about galactic politics, no training in diplomacy, no understanding of the complex relationships between the hundreds of species that made up the Federation. She was just a 19-year-old girl who had been living on the streets for 2 years. But Alexander had spent decades studying humanity's place in the galaxy, and he understood something that the politicians and military leaders did not. The Federation was not just a political alliance or a trading partnership. It was a community of species that had learned to work together across vast differences in biology, culture, and technology. What held that community together was not power or wealth, but the shared belief that all beings deserved dignity and care. Maya Rodriguez understood that belief better than anyone Alexander had ever met. She lived it every day, even when the world gave her nothing in return. There are risks, Kelrin warned. If the Council rejects humanity after hearing from your representative, there will be no second chance. The Zephyrians will use any failure as proof that humans should remain isolated. And if we send another politician or CEO to speak for humanity, Alexander said, we will get the same result we always get. Polite interest followed by rejection based on our violent history and social problems. Alexander pulled up files on his computer showing Maya's background, her school records from before she became homeless, psychological profiles that showed her remarkable resilience and compassion, despite trauma and abandonment. Everything about her story demonstrated the best of what humans could be. Maya Rodriguez saved my life tonight without knowing who I am, or what I represent, Alexander said. She shared her last food with me, cared for my injuries, and asked for nothing in return. If that is not what the Federation wants to see in a potential member species, then maybe we do not belong among the stars after all. Kelrin was quiet for a long time, his skin cycling through colors that Alexander recognized as deep thought. Finally, the alien ambassador spoke. Bring her to me, Kelrin said. Let me meet this human who impressed you so much. If she agrees to represent your species before the Integration Council, we will make it happen. Alexander nodded, already planning how to find Maya again and convince her to take on the most important job in human history. She had saved one man in an alley, and now she might save her entire species. The injured man told Maya his name was Alex, but he did not tell her the whole truth about who he was. Alexander Kane owned half the buildings in downtown Chicago and had more money than some small countries. But sitting behind a dumpster with blood on his face, he looked just like another person who needed help. Maya used the cleanest piece of cloth she had, a small towel from the shelter, to wipe the blood from his forehead. The cut was not as bad as it had looked, but it would need proper medical attention. She worked carefully, the way her foster mother had taught her years ago when Maya was still young enough to believe that adults would take care of her. You should go to a hospital, Maya said, examining the wound. This might need stitches. Alexander watched her face as she worked, noticing how gentle her hands were despite how rough her life had clearly been. He had met thousands of people in his 42 years, most of them wanting something from him, but this girl had risked her safety for a complete stranger and was asking for nothing in return. Tell me about yourself, Alexander said. How long have you been living out here? Maya shrugged like it did not matter, but Alexander could see the sadness in her eyes. 2 years now. I turned 18 and they told me I was too old for foster care, so I had to leave. I tried to get a job, but you need an address to get a job, and you need a job to get an address. It is like a circle that never ends. She told him about the different places she had tried to sleep, the people who had been kind and the people who had been cruel, the way she had learned to find food and stay warm and avoid the police who sometimes arrested people just for being homeless. She spoke without feeling sorry for herself, like she was describing the weather or the color of the buildings. What did you want to do? Alexander asked. Before all this, what were your dreams? Maya was quiet for a long time, and Alexander thought she might not answer. Then she said, I wanted to be a doctor. I was good at science in school, and I liked the idea of helping people feel better. Stupid, right? Not stupid at all, Alexander said, and he meant it. He was starting to understand that this girl represented something important, something he had been looking for without knowing it. Maya finished cleaning his wound and sat back against the brick wall. Those men who were chasing you, do you know who they were? Alexander knew exactly who they were and why they had tried to kill him, But he could not explain about the aliens or the galactic government, or the vote that would decide whether humanity was ready to join the stars. Instead, he said, business enemies. Some people do not like the deals I make. You must make some pretty important deals, Maya said, looking at his expensive suit. Something like that, Alexander said, then changed the subject. What do you do for food out here? Maya told him about the soup kitchen 3 blocks away that served meals on Tuesday and Thursday, about the restaurant that sometimes threw away food that was still good, about the days when she did not eat at all because there was nothing to find. She spoke about it like she was discussing the weather, but Alexander could see how thin she was, how her clothes hung loose on her small frame. I have some crackers, Maya said, reaching into her backpack. If you are hungry. Alexander looked at the small package of crackers, probably worth less than $1, and realized it might be all the food Maya had. She was offering to share her last meal with a stranger she had just met, the same stranger she had risked her life to save. Keep them, Alexander said. You need them more than I do. Everyone gets hungry, Maya said, breaking the crackers in half anyway. And you just got beat up. You need energy to heal. Alexander accepted half the crackers, understanding that refusing would hurt her feelings. As he ate the dry, cheap food, he thought about the restaurant meals that cost more than Maya probably saw in a month, about the waste and excess of his normal life. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, listening to the rain slow down and the city wake up around them. Alexander was thinking about everything Maya had told him, about her dreams and her kindness and her quiet strength. This girl was everything good about humanity, everything the aliens needed to see. Maya, Alexander said finally, what if I told you that helping me tonight was the most important thing you have ever done? I would say you are giving me too much credit, Maya said. I just did what anyone should do. That is exactly the point, Alexander said. But he could see Maya did not understand. The sound of vehicles approaching made them both tense up. But these were not the same men from before. Alexander recognized the engine sound of his security team, the people who had been looking for him since he disappeared from his office building. I have to go, Alexander said, standing up carefully. The world spun for a moment, but he managed to stay upright. Maya stood up too, suddenly looking worried. Will you be safe? Yes, Alexander said. Thanks to you. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a business card, one of the few things the attackers had not taken. The card was simple, with just his name and a phone number, but Maya did not recognize the name or understand what it meant. If you ever need anything, Alexander said, pressing the card into her hand, call that number and tell them who you are. I do not have a phone, Maya said, but she took the card anyway. Find a way, Alexander said. Promise me. Maya nodded, though she was not sure why this seemed so important to him. The vehicles were getting closer now, and she could see lights through the rain. Thank you, Alexander said one more time. I mean that more than you know. Maya watched him walk toward the lights, moving steadier now, but still like a man who had been through something terrible. She looked down at the business card in her hand. But the rain was making the ink run and she could barely read the words. By the time the vehicles drove away, Maya was alone again in her doorway, but something had changed. She did not know what, but she could feel it in the air like electricity before a storm. The card was just a piece of paper, but she put it carefully in her backpack next to the photograph of her foster sister. Maya Rodriguez did not know she had just saved the most powerful man on Earth, or that her simple act of kindness had set in motion events that would change the entire human race. Maya Rodriguez pressed herself deeper into the doorway as another wave of cold rain swept down the empty Chicago street. The cardboard beneath her had turned to mush hours ago, but she stayed still and quiet like the streets had taught her. At 19 years old, she had learned that moving too much at night brought the wrong kind of attention. The neon signs from the closed shops painted red and blue streaks across the wet pavement, making the world look like a broken mirror. She pulled her torn jacket tighter around her thin shoulders and checked the small backpack that held everything she owned in the world. A water bottle, some crackers she had saved from the shelter, a book with half its pages missing, and a photograph of her foster sister from years ago. The photograph was the only thing that really mattered, but she would never tell anyone that. The rain had been falling for 3 days straight, turning December in Chicago into something that felt like punishment. Maya had been living on these streets for 2 years now, ever since she aged out of the foster care system with nowhere to go, and no one who cared enough to help. She had tried the shelters, but they filled up fast, and some of the people there scared her more than sleeping outside did. Tonight felt different, though, like something was coming that would change everything. Maya did not believe in magic or signs from the universe, but she had learned to trust the feeling in her stomach that warned her when trouble was near. That same feeling was buzzing now, but it felt strange and new. A man stumbled around the corner, walking like someone who had been drinking too much or hit too hard. Maya could see he was wearing an expensive suit, even though it was now torn and dirty. Blood was running down the side of his face from a cut near his eye, and he kept looking over his shoulder like something was chasing him. Maya knew she should stay hidden. Getting involved with other people's problems was how you ended up hurt or worse on the streets. But something about the way the man moved, the scared look in his eyes, made her think of herself on her first night alone when she was 17 and did not know how to survive. 3 men came around the same corner, moving fast and looking angry. They wore dark clothes and walked like hunters following prey. Maya had seen men like this before, the kind who hurt people for money or just because they enjoyed it. The injured man was stumbling toward her doorway, but he had not seen her yet. The 3 men were getting closer, and Maya could hear them talking in low voices about finishing what they started. The injured man collapsed against a car just 20 feet from where she was hiding, and Maya realized he would not be able to run much further. She made a choice that surprised even her. Maya stood up from her hiding place and called out to the injured man in a loud whisper, "Hey, over here, quickly!" The man looked up at her with confused eyes, but Maya was already moving. She grabbed his arm and pulled him toward the narrow alley beside her building. There was a space behind a large dumpster where she sometimes slept when the rain was too heavy, and it was dark enough that no one would see them if they stayed quiet. The injured man was heavier than he looked, but Maya had gotten strong from carrying everything she owned and walking miles every day looking for work. She managed to get him behind the dumpster just as the 3 men reached the spot where he had been standing. Maya pressed her finger to her lips to tell the man to be quiet, then listened to the footsteps of the 3 men as they searched the area. She could hear them talking about checking the alleys and not letting their target get away. The injured man was breathing hard, and Maya was afraid they would hear him. One of the 3 men walked into their alley, his footsteps slow and careful. Maya held her breath and pressed herself against the cold brick wall, trying to make herself invisible. The man with the expensive suit was shaking, either from cold or fear, and Maya put her hand on his arm to steady him. The footsteps came closer to their hiding spot. Maya could smell cigarettes and cheap cologne as the man walked past the dumpster. She closed her eyes and tried not to move, even though her heart was beating so loud she was sure everyone could hear it. After what felt like hours but was probably only minutes, the footsteps moved away. Maya heard the 3 men talking to each other, saying they had lost him and would have to try again later. She waited until she could not hear their voices anymore, before she let herself breathe normally again. The injured man was looking at her like he could not believe what had just happened. In the dim light from the street, Maya could see he was older than her, maybe in his 30s, with dark hair and the kind of face that belonged in business meetings rather than back alleys. "Why did you help me?" he asked in a voice that was quiet but strong. Maya did not have a good answer for that question. She had learned not to trust people, not to get involved, not to take risks that might get her hurt. But she had helped him anyway, and now they were both sitting behind a dumpster in the rain like 2 refugees from the same war. "Because you needed help," she said finally. "Everyone deserves that much, I think." The man studied her face in the darkness, and Maya wondered what he was seeing. She knew she looked younger than 19, too thin, with clothes that had seen better years and hair that she cut herself with scissors from the dollar store. But she also knew her eyes were older than they should be, full of things a 19-year-old should not have had to learn. "What is your name?" the man asked. "Maya," she said. "Maya Rodriguez." "Thank you, Maya Rodriguez," he said, and something in his voice made her think he meant it more than most people meant anything they said.